Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation today. Got a story here from Minneapolis, where Minneapolis City Hall celebrated Hijab Day. Now, what that means is all of the female employers of Minneapolis city government were pressured to wear a hijab and a sign of unity, multiculturalism, and diversity and identity with their Muslim female coworkers. Here's how the story reads from Breitbart.com. Muslim employees at Minneapolis City Hall recently declared Hijab Day in the workplace and convinced non-Muslim coworkers to don the Muslim head covering, including the city's police chief, Janae Harteau, who is well known as a homosexual. Female Muslim employees at the government building declared February 28 to be Hijab Day, then systematically convinced nearly every female employee at work to don the traditional headwear to pose for pictures, which were later posted to Facebook. Now, the question that I've got is, okay, let's say we're fine with this. This is Sharia compliant, by the way. So Minnesota is rapidly becoming a Sharia compliant state. Minneapolis rapidly becoming a Sharia compliant city. And so pressure is put. These non-Muslim women, it says they were, what's the word that's used? Convinced, systematically convinced. What does that mean? They didn't want to do it. It wasn't their preference. If it was left up to them, they wouldn't have done it. But pressure was brought to bear on them. You've got to do this as a sign of solidarity, as a sign of diversity. Something wrong with you. You're an intolerant Islamophobic bigot if you won't wear this headgear that's a symbol of Islam. Now, the question obviously you have to have is, okay, now that's been done. They've had Hijab Day. It's been done. Every female in the place wore a headgear, had her picture taken, put up at Facebook. So here's my proposal for the city of Minneapolis. Let's have a cross day. A lot of female employees who are Christians wear cross necklaces to work. Not every one of them, just like not every Muslim female employee wears a hijab to work. But you've got Christian employees, female employees, that wear a cross necklace. So my proposal is, I think just in the interest of fairness and equality and justice and diversity and multiculturalism, we've just spent a day celebrating something that female followers of this religion wear as a symbol of their faith. Now, it is only right, it is only fair that we ask every female employee, including these Muslim employees, female employees, to wear a cross just for one day. We're going to declare Good Friday is going to be Cross Day, Minneapolis City Hall. We're going to systematically convince every female employee at Minneapolis City Hall to wear a cross necklace and get her picture taken so we can post things up at Facebook. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that, but that's what would be fair. That would be absolutely appropriate. Nobody would have a right to complain. This happened on February 28. I'm just reading about it this morning. This means nobody complained about this. This was not a problem. So if this is not a problem, then it absolutely should be no problem whatsoever to have a cross day on Good Friday and systematically convince every female employee of the city of Minneapolis to wear a cross on that day. Now, today is a day where we remember the death of Susan B. Anthony. She's got a statue in the U.S. Capitol building. She's one of the first feminists. Her face is on a U.S. dollar coin. Her face is on a 3-cent stamp. She's got a statue in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Not a lot of women are in the statuary in the U.S. Capitol. She died on this date in 1906. Now, she was a crusader to end slavery. She was a Quaker. She was a devout Christian. And one of her causes in life was to bring slavery to an end. I've got a piece here, by the way, about Robert Duvall, the Hollywood actor. And this is not going to make him any friends in Hollywood. He blasts the movie The Butler, which I have not seen. But here is what the piece on Breitbart says. In an interview with the Daily Beast, living legend and Oscar winner Robert Duvall blasted the civil rights film The Butler as very inaccurate. He said this: JFK had one of the worst civil rights voting records, and listen to this, and this is historically true and accurate. All the atrocities in the South were committed by the Democratic Party. Now, that's what people don't want you to know. That's what the left does not want you to know. The KKK was formed by the Democratic Party. All of the Jim Crow laws were passed and enforced and enacted by the Democratic Party. The NRA was formed by Republicans from the North to give guns to newly freed blacks in the South so they could defend themselves against white supremacist Democrats. That's how the NRA got its start. It was white Democrats that filibustered the civil rights and voting rights legislation of 1964, 1965. So Robert Duvall burning whatever bridge is left between him and the community of Hollywood. By the way, here's another. I'll get back to. I'm not losing my place. I'll get back to it here in just a second. But this is a striking story. It reminds you of Acts chapter 5, Ananias and Sapphira. It's Ananias and Sapphira, as you remember, they sold a piece of land. They brought the proceeds and laid it at the apostles' feet, and they lied about how much they were giving. They said they'd given it all. Now, they didn't. They kept back part of it for themselves. But they saw the oohs and ahs that were given by the congregation to other people that had made generous donations to the apostles, so they wanted to pretend like they had given more than they actually had. They sold the land for such and such a price. They only brought part of the proceeds to the apostles. They pretended, they lied and said they were giving it all because they wanted to impress everybody with their sacrifice and their dedication to the cause. And Peter said, look, the problem here, Peter was very clear about this, the problem here is not that you kept back some of the proceeds for yourself. That was your property. You were free to do with it whatever you wanted. You could have sold it and kept it all for yourself. That's important to understand, that there's no involuntary communism or redistribution of wealth in the New Testament. We believe in the distribution of wealth, the redistribution of wealth. We believe it ought to be strictly voluntary. It ought to be motivated by compassion, personal generosity, desire to alleviate someone else's need. That's what motivates us to give. We don't believe in the involuntary redistribution of wealth. That's theft. And you see that clearly because Peter says to Ananias, look, it was under your control the whole time. You could have kept it. You could have sold it. You could have kept it all. You could have sold it, given half to the work of alleviating the needs of the poor, or you could have sold it and given it all. It was completely up to you. Your problem was that you have not lied to men, but you have lied to God. That was the problem. It wasn't that you kept part of it for yourself. It's that you lied about it. And remember, Ananias keeled over dead. I mean, he dropped dead on the spot. And then Sapphira, his wife, comes in, and Peter, she doesn't know anything about this. I mean, he dragged her husband out by his feet. She comes in, and they asked her, did you sell the land for such and such a price? She said, yes, and she falls over dead because she'd lied just like her husband did. They gave her an opportunity to tell the truth, and she lied along with her husband. She falls over dead, and it says great fear came over the whole community. No kidding. Well, here's a story. Fox News just read it coming across the street. A longtime Connecticut pastor dropped dead before his congregation Sunday, moments after his parishioners reportedly yelled words of forgiveness over his alleged infidelity. Bishop Bobby Davis, pastor of the Miracle Faith World Outreach Church in Bridgeport, died after parishioners shouted at him over accusations of infidelity, while many also screamed, we forgive you, we love you. Well, we forgive you means we think you did something wrong here. After the service on Sunday, the bishop's family asked us to remain in the church, and the bishop confessed to us something that happened long ago. He wanted to come clean with all of us. He wanted to ask our forgiveness, and then apparently, once he made the confession, he dropped to the floor and died on the spot. The death is still under investigation, pronounced dead at Bridgeport Hospital. Now, back to Susan B. Anthony, one of the early feminists. And, you know, one of the problems with feminism today is there's no femininity in it. We'll get to this in the second hour with this whole Ban Bossy campaign. They want to ban the word bossy. They don't want anybody to use the word bossy in reference to a woman. We'll talk about that a little bit in the second hour. But here's Susan B. Anthony, one of the idols of the feminist movement. She's considered to be one of the early feminists. The problem with feminism, I was going to say, there's no femininity in it. There's feminism, there's females, but there's no femininity in the feminist movement. So here's Susan B. Anthony, statue at U.S. Capitol building, face on a 3-cent stamp, face on the U.S. Dollar coin, one of the crusaders for the freedom of slaves. That's where I got myself off track, talking about her crusade against slavery and Robert Duvall and all that. But she was a strong, devoted, conservative evangelical Christian, raised as a Quaker, and that's what motivated her and prompted her to oppose slavery as an obscenity in the eyes of God. And she also crusaded for a woman's right to vote. She was one of the first women's suffragists. She was also a big part of the temperance movement. She opposed liquor, drunkenness, and abortion. She worked hard to pass the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, all of those bitterly opposed by the Democratic Party in the South. She got women admitted to the University of Rochester in 1872. She actually got arrested for voting in the 1872 presidential election, and she voted the Republican ticket right down the line. And women weren't allowed to vote at that time, so she got arrested for her trouble 14 years after she died. Women won the right to vote. Now, here's what she said in July of 1869. Susan B. Anthony, a feminist icon. I deplore the horrible crime of child murder. Now, notice this is 1869. Everybody think that abortion was basically invented like in 1973. No, this is 1869, 104 years before Roe v. Wade. The earliest feminist, one of the earliest feminists, said, I deplore the horrible crime of child murder. She had no hesitation as a woman, as a feminist, calling it the murder of a child. No matter what the motive, love of ease, or a desire to save from suffering the unborn innocent, the woman is awfully guilty who commits the deed. It will burden her conscience in life. It will burden her soul in death. But, oh, thrice guilty is he who drove her to the desperation which impels her to the crime. He says, look, this is a crime. It's the murder of a child. The woman is going to be burdened in conscience. I don't want that for any woman. I don't want that on her conscience. But even worse are the men who drove her to commit the crime. Focal Point, AFR Talk.
The whole of your life, every